Hi guys, Brett Yancey here, and today we're going to look at run charts and how we can use those through the lens of quality management. What we have in front of us is a series of time, right? Weeks 31 through 34, and a process performance variable. This variable can be anything like, let's say, viscosity, or it could be number of errors. It could be a lot of different things. But let's go ahead and roll with number of errors. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you're going to highlight all of your data. And so real quickly, I'll walk through everything that I'm doing as I'm clicking, so you're not getting confused. So I'm going to go ahead and put some grid lines on this because I'm like that. And so I'll do all borders. I just clicked up here to borders. And then I'm going to center it. So I go to align, center, and now I have my data all centered. So now I'm going to left click A3. I'm going to hold down the shift button. I'm going to scroll down with my mouse wheel, hold down the shift, and I'm going to click B37 so I can highlight all of this data at the same time. Now I'm going to go to insert, and for your run charts, you could use like a scatter graph or a scatter plot. That's helpful. But for our purposes, I'd really like you to use a line chart. And so you go to insert, line, displays data over time. And here we get a nice little line chart showing our number of errors over 34 weeks. And one thing that I always like to do is give these a title. So you can see this one already has a title, but to get that title in there, you right click the graph, click format, and these elements over here on the right will come out, right? And so you can change your legend, you can change your chart title, you can set your vertical axis and horizontal axis, minimum, maximum, what units it goes by, a lot of stuff like that, which is important. But for today, I just want you to be able to make that chart title and call this number of errors. All right, I click my little X to close it out, and then we have our run chart. Now, when you're working a problem like this, a lecturer or a professor may ask you, well, you need to understand over what time period process change occurred. And so there might be, a period of time where things are getting bad. There might be a period of time where things get worse, and then a period of improvement, followed by a period of leveling off, which I think you can kind of see in this run chart, right? So let's say, we were averaging 110 errors a week for a long time, and then we tried to implement this new process to make things better, and then things got worse before they got better, right? That's something real common that you'll see. And then firm or organization kind of realized how to practice this new process. And what happened? Well, the number of errors gradually went down until it leveled off again here, looks like around 5 or 4 a week or something. But part of that question will lead you to, establish periods of time where those changes happen. And so I've just sort of really quickly, and this probably won't be exact, put together a quick way of doing that. And so, we'll want to look at, well, what was the average number of errors from weeks 1 through 13? Well, to get that, you're going to, you can create your own labels, but the formula to do it will be equals equals average, open parentheses, and we want weeks 1 through 13. So again, I did equals average, open parentheses. Now I'm going to left click right here on week 1. I'm going to hold down shift, go to week 13. And you can see up here it's got B4 through B16, which is this block of data right here. And I'm going to close my parentheses. Right? And a lot of times, it'll give you a long number. I think most lecturers, and myself included, will want you to round to 2 decimal places. And to do that, you can use this little option up here to increase your decimals or decrease them. Mine were already set to 2, but make sure that you are getting that down to 2 decimal places, please. So we're going to do the same thing for weeks 14 through 17. I'm going to type in equals. Start typing in average, right? Now instead of typing out the whole word, you can just go to this here, double click. It even gives my parenthesis in there. I'm going to go from weeks 14 through 17. I left click B17, which is week 14, and then I hold down shift and I left click week 17. While I'm still holding down shift to get that closed parentheses, I close it off, I hit enter. Same thing for 18 through 20. Go down here, left click 18, hold down shift, left click 20, close parenthesis, enter, and the final one, which is 21 through 34. Okay. So within these types of questions, they may ask you for another type of element. For this specific problem, we're looking at standard deviation. And so how do I get my standard deviation? Well, it's done very similar to the same way that we get the average. And so I'll, create my little labels, and I'll box them in using that borders function that we looked at earlier. And so I'll go to here, and I'll type in equals. Oops. So standard deviation is different because it's equals STD. And then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options that pop up. And there's a lot of different types of standard deviations that you can look at in business statistics, right? I would say these first 2 are probably the most important. For our purposes in the problem assigned, you're going to be looking at standard deviation of a sample, which is stdev.s, right? And so I'll just type it in this time, stdev.s, open parentheses, and then I want weeks 1 through 13, which again aligns with, the averages that we calculated previously. And so again, I clicked B4, I held down shift, and then I clicked B16 to capture that data set, continuously holding down shift, close my parenthesis, enter, and we got our standard deviation, making sure that you have the correct number of decimal places by using this increase or decrease decimal places toolbar right here. And we'll do the same thing for weeks 14 through 17. Equals STD. I can go ahead and click my stdev.s, which is standard deviation of a sample. It gives me that parentheses. I know I want weeks 14, so I left click, hold down shift, go down to week 17, left click, close parentheses. Equals stdev.s, open parentheses. I click week 18, hold down shift, left click week 20, close parentheses. And the last one's weeks 21 through 24, 21 through 34, close. All right. And so what are the takeaways from this information? Well, it looks like from weeks 1 through 13, we were averaging nearly 140 errors a week, right? And if we look at that, that's this block of time here. If I was trying to tailor this answer to a specific set of questions, right, we'd probably be looking at something closer to like weeks 1 through 5, weeks 6 through 9, and then weeks 10 through 17, give or take, right? It's somewhat subjective. But in short, what are these telling us? From weeks 1 through 13, we were averaging 140 errors per week. 14 through 17, there's a significant decrease down to 70. From weeks 18 to 20, we got it down to 20. And for those last, looks like 13 weeks, we were averaging 5.5 errors a week, which is pretty good considering where you started. And then we took the standard deviation of those data blocks, right? And it looks like we had standard deviations of 26, 13, 10, and 1.6. So what does that standard deviation mean? Think of it in terms of how much this line is moving on average, right? And that's just the simplest way that I can put it to you without going into in-depth statistical definitions. What you need to understand is from these first 13 weeks, it was deviating on average about 26 errors per week, right? So that was the standard deviation. And then for this second set of weeks, 14 through 17, it was deviating about 13. From weeks 18 to 20, it was deviating 10. And for this last 13 weeks, it was very little standard deviation comparatively, because we're only seeing about 1.6. Okay. Now, one final question that you may see is, well, how much did the process help us from when we started to where we ended? And for this type of question, I just want you to really focus on looking at this average, right? And there's definitely ways to use standard deviation, but we'll get to that in a second. But for the average, what we want to do is look at where we started and look at where we ended. So where did we start? 136. Where did we end? 5.57. Okay, so let's pretend I don't know how to do this. And so what would I do? I go 5.57 divided by, okay, so that gives me 4%. Well, that doesn't really help me. And if this were an open form, I'd say, why doesn't this help me? Well, we want to know the amount of change between those two numbers, right? 4%, which is what this would say if I change this to percent, right? Doesn't tell me much because it's just 5 out of 136. But if we think in terms of, well, how much was the change? We can do a formula in Excel that will tell us that. And so what's the change? Equals, open parentheses. Well, this one changed from 136.92 minus 5.57. Oops, I don't want percentage anymore. So it changed 131.35 roughly. Get my two decimal places. All right, and so what is that as compared to where we started? Change divided by where we started, percentage, change 95%. So it's a 95% improvement from this first few weeks, weeks 1 through 13, to the last 13 weeks, which is pretty significant, right? That's a lot of resources that are no longer being allocated to all these errors. And so I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to go through how I did this again. And I'm going to do it in a sort of a shortcut way where I'm just using one formula. All right, so again, we want change divided by where we started. So change, so the change between these two things is sort of indicative that we're going to subtract them. So I click this down here, I do equals, I do open parentheses to create a formula, 136.92, I just left click it, I type in minus 5.57, so that's the change, right? I close my parentheses to complete that mathematical formula. I do divided by, and where did we start? This H4 again, and I hit enter. All right, and so now I want this in percentage, so I go up here, I click percentage, we got 95.93%. Right, so we instituted a new process. How much did it lead to in an improvement on average? Well, it led to a 95.93% improvement from weeks 1 through 13 through weeks 21 through 34. All right, and so I just wanted to briefly go over how to do this within Excel. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you and have a great day.